Today's episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and join the conversation at thehippocratic-collective.com. Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to remind you that Creating Space, my coaching course and retreat, is open for registration and enrollment now. I am so excited that folks are signing up for spending 6 months with me online and then 4 days with me in person at a spa retreat later on this year. And I want you to be in there. So head to joanchanmd.com/space and book a call with me. You get to chat with me by phone, learn if this program is right for you. So head to joanchanmd.com/space. I can't wait to talk to you and invite you into Creating Space. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I have been really looking forward to this conversation with this particular healthcare human who has exited healthcare, but has been through the journey, so will always be in the club for sure. I do feel like I already know lots about you, Tony, because I did read your memoir. I couldn't stop reading it, honestly. I am known as a pretty big book snacker, especially nonfiction. I tend to not finish books, and but I couldn't stop reading yours.
Oh my gosh.
It was just really beautifully written, just to start off with a compliment that I mean sincerely. But I'm so excited now to actually converse with you, the human, versus just like on the page what I was reading. So Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's so funny. I've been having this experience since the book came out, is that I speak to people who I'm meeting for the first time, but they know like the most intimate, stuff about my life and my brain. So it's not too weird anymore. And I'm so happy you liked it, and tell your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. We will talk about it on this podcast for sure. I feel like I have like a version of that because I've been like by myself making this podcast for 3 years, and a lot of it is like me just like sharing my feelings, sharing my thoughts, sharing my experiences, crying, whatever. And so now I'll have people and they're like, I feel like I know you, like your voice is in my head, and it's weird but also awesome at the same time.
Yeah, it really is. It's just like you're making friends worldwide.
That's
and
it.
If you can be that voice for somebody somewhere, that's what you do it for, right? Like that's why we share of ourselves and share our stories.
So true. Well, would you like to share an introduction of yourself?
Sure.
Those who haven't heard of you yet.
Yeah. So if you haven't absorbed the most dark and smelly intimacies of my life via my book, my name is Tony Chin-Quee. I, by trade, am an otolaryngologist. Born and raised in New York City, hopped around the country as we all do for training in school. Ended up for training in Detroit. That is where I got the idea to write my memoir, which is called I Can't Save You. It was kind of a survival tactic at that time, just having the idea of writing this book and being able to share, my experience going through medicine with others in a way that I hadn't really seen other doctors write their doctor books. And so just, digging into, the uncomfortable thoughts we have on our own in the little caves of our minds, and digging into, the subjects of our mental health and how it's taboo even to us who are going through it. And also, digging into all sorts of identity, issues that, they try to suppress during training that, you really need to listen to and tap into. And so that was kind of my inspiration for writing, which kind of honestly ended up saving my life. during that time, I feel. And, after that, after training, I started working for Kaiser out in California, just north of LA, in a lovely place called Antelope Valley. If you know your LA geography, it's basically up in the mountains that are above Los Angeles. It's kind of like a mountain desert area. And I worked there for 3 years while I started writing my book, and then I quit. We'll get into all those reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then I started writing for television, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. And then I moved with my family to England. So now I live in northern England. We were just talking before we started about where that is. It's just shy of Edinburgh, if you know your England geography. And it's a city called Durham, which is just wonderful. And it's known for its big cathedral where they filmed, known for filming films like the Harry Potter series. The courtyard with like the courtyard where they have like a big tree in the middle, but also their hallways, which have these like little arches that they
Yes.
walk past. Like that's just the courtyard of the main cathedral here in Durham, where we just walk through, and it's really beautiful. So yeah, that's come to Durham. It's very lovely here. And yeah, so that's just a bit of the journey. Um, so yeah, that's my life so far.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Obviously, I have a million questions. We have a Durham here. Well, so I live in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. So,
Ooh,
and Canada as part of the Commonwealth still. Lots of things here are named after things there. So
yeah.
often I'll hear, like we have a Cambridge, we have a London, we have a Paris even, but they are the accents are less exciting to me than if I was in those places. But
Only slightly less exciting. I
slightly,
mean,
yeah.
as someone who lived on, just was a direct neighbor to Windsor, Ontario for 5 years,
Yes.
I am a big fan of my Ontario Canadians and their accents, and I just think it's lovely.
So good. Okay, cool. I'd love to start actually with uh, how you came to writing during that journey through and reading the book, like I'm sure it was edited, but were you really writing at the time that those things were happening? Because it almost reads like a journal, especially in the early part, like you're sort of writing to yourself. Was that sort of the methodology where you were using at the time?
That was the intent.
Yeah.
And I started the book as a series of just journal entries, like partway through residency, because okay, so my whole like journey with this is I never wrote anything long form like this before. Like I'd never
Yeah.
written a book. I wasn't writing, short stories or anything like that. I just knew that I loved telling stories, and people had told me that I was good at it. And so, when the going got really rough in residency for me, which was about like halfway through, like
Yeah.
going into like the third, it was a 5 year training program. So going into third year, um, I was at a real low point, and I was just like, I got to figure out some way to survive this, or some way to make this journey that I'm on, this training that I'm in, worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because if all that comes out of this is I go to clinic and go to the OR every day for the rest of my life, like that's not it for me. And so, what could make this time meaningful so that I can keep waking up every morning and going, to this job
Yeah.
that seems like it, is trying its best to murder me. And
Yes.
I just remembered, that I always loved storytelling in all its different forms. I'd, done a lot of acting and singing and dancing and all that stuff growing up. I was a super artsy kid. I went to like an
Cool.
artsy private high school in New York, and we didn't have like a football team, but we had like this big, like we called it dance concert, which is this big 2 hour dance show choreographed by students starring the students, and that was like the biggest event of the year. So we were like that's the level of artsy that like, I'm messing around with. And and I was an a cappella singer in college. So, all that sort of stuff. But going into medicine, that stuff gets stomped out. And, even having any passing connection to it, you're kind of told you got to give that up. And I realized, after giving that up, I wasn't me anymore. And I needed, if I was going to survive, I needed to find that again. And so that's when I started writing to kind of get back in touch with myself, and get back in touch with, like maybe there's power in me at least telling myself these stories. And I started the rough drafts of that stuff, back then. And some of the sections, some of the, moments are, direct, in the book, they're direct copies of stuff I wrote at the time. But my goal with the book was to have it read as a journal, at the time. And, there are a lot of challenges that come along with doing that. But, that's what I thought would be most meaningful.
What were some of those challenges?
Yeah, so I've talked, since the book came out, I've talked with a lot of folks who are trying to write memoirs and trying to write nonfiction. And some of the best advice I think I could give folks is that you have to remember that you're not writing this for yourself. You're writing it for other people. And so a journal is for you. That's for you to process, for you to navigate your emotions. If you're writing for other people, you have to have those emotions. You have to have a handle on those things, because you're not writing for yourself anymore. You're writing to evoke emotions in other people. And if your emotions are not yet dealt with and you haven't yet navigated the stuff, then when you start to write about it, whatever is still underneath, it's going to bleed through in ways that you don't necessarily intend. And so, for me, that happened at multiple points. Like, I went to therapy. I thought I got a handle on my issues with my dad, no problem. And then I started writing about him, and reading it back, the narration, I was so caustic in a way that I didn't intend to be. And I was like, oh, okay, I got work to do before I can share this with other people, because that's not what I want people to get out of this moment, And so that was a big lesson, and really took some time. And the process of writing the book, it took me 5 years, to write it, and to revise it, and to get, myself in the right headspace so that the narration of the book could follow the journey that I wanted it to follow.
Wow. It's so cool how in doing so, what I'm hearing is so the original act of writing to save yourself, that was for you, and maybe you had an idea, maybe someday I'll share it, but that was one layer that it helped you. And then as you started to shape it for other people, though, that actually accidentally and maybe annoyingly gave you more opportunities to clarify and get to know yourself even more, even as it was so that you could create distance from the story. Hey?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a wild process. But it definitely took lots of editors, both official and unofficial, to help me figure that out. And I was just like, why don't anybody understand what I'm trying to do? This is how it's going to be. And they're just like, listen, dude, you sound mad and you sound like kind of an asshole. And is that, if that's what you want, then that's what you want. But I don't think that's what you want. So I was like, okay, yeah, if I'm going to sound like a douchebag, I want to do that on purpose, and use it in certain parts of the book on purpose, instead of just that being how my voice on the page sounds. So yeah, the process is continually taking yourself to task and continually working on how you understand your own journey, so that you can have the freedom to really shape it in a way that means something to someone else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it's so, I love hearing how different people come to at least one of their practices of sort of self-awareness, self-knowledge, identity formation, which maybe are slightly different things, but to me, all kind of fall under the same bucket.
Yeah.
And I think about how, like you said, like you had some amount of a fully formed identity going into medicine. And then in your words, and I would concur and relate to, like, medicine really doing its level best to like squash so much of your identity, and connecting it with something I've heard you say before, which is that the vast majority of like medical students and residents are like, they were just teenagers like 2 seconds ago, like really young people.
Yeah.
And connecting it further with like, I actually do medical education now, and a very hot topic is like professional identity formation. And something, if anyone's going to talk about professional identity formation, is just even the notion that like that time of your life is a time where you are doing adult, personal, like human identity formation. Like when I got into medical school, I did the math. I was like, oh, I was 22 years old. Like I was a little infant still. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was very much like the sheltered, nerdy. I came from like an evangelical Christian sheltered background, and had a bunch of identity formation to do as an adult anyway.
Yes.
And now I'm doing it within medical education. Thoughts about that?
Thoughts. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got the nail on the head there. The thing is like, yeah, professional identity is what you're kind of, when you enter into med school and enter into, residency or training, and all that stuff. Professional identity is what you're trying to build. And as much as they say they're going to educate you on it, the education is really in the shadows, right?
Yes.
We call it like the hidden curriculum of medicine, where you just, there's a bunch of unspoken rules, unspoken behaviors that you're supposed to just get with the program on, or you will be made to suffer. And, that is part of forming your professional identity. It's struggling with that, struggling to even know that hidden curriculum exists. And then if you can figure that out, then what do you do with that information? How much of yourself do you lose? How much of yourself actually works? Is there room for you to kind of build who you really are into your professional identity? That's thing one. And it's a really big thing one. Thing two is, your personal identity, which typically you enter into medicine stunted, because we're still kids. I was absolutely no, I mean, if my identity was fully formed, I would have had nothing to write about, right?
Yeah.
Like I had plenty of stuff that I needed to deal with, but I was really good at not dealing with it, like most of us who end up in medicine are. And so in the background of all the professional stuff, you got your personal stuff, which we usually have never dealt with. And we enter into kind of this perfect storm situation where any defenses that we've grown up using to shield ourselves from dealing with our personal identities and the things that need doing there, all those defenses get stripped away. And so what do you do when you're faced with like the parts of yourself that have always made you uncomfortable, and you're also having to take care of people and learn how to do that, and also getting yelled at for doing that wrong all the time and all that? It's the whole enterprise is kind of messed up. But there's a lot that we deal with and try to take on, and it's really too much. It's really too much.
I think, period. Like it is actually just too much.
Period.
I've thought about it a lot, and I mean, it's okay to not have the solutions, but it'd be useful to start asking different questions about like how could we possibly still train in the skills and the knowledge. Like I would prefer that physicians and other people in healthcare still existed, for sure. I'm still like down with that. And so therefore they will need training to enter such professions.
Sure.
But I'm deeply curious about like how it can look where, yes, like I think it makes sense to have like a professional identity as as separate or a piece of your full identity. But even just having it be that way, where it's like, here's your full identity, and here's the work you do in medicine. You don't have to squash or separate or split yourself and shame yourself. Like, it would be useful if there was a version of what we're given that it allowed for our full humanity, you know?
It would. That would be nice. Yeah, who was I talking to? I was talking to a program director the other day, an internal medicine program director, and we were talking about wellness. And she's been around for a little longer than we have, and so she's, seen the evolution of how wellness is discussed and dealt with in medicine over the years, right? And right now they're trying to get away from this idea of work-life balance, because work-life balance implies that you can't have balance in your life if work is there. You know what I mean? Like, there's no
Oh, I
balance.
see.
Work is not part of the balance. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so is there a way to talk about it that's more integrative, I guess?
Yeah.
Like helping to find meaning in work so that it influences the balance and influences your home life outside of work. Is there a way to have your real life, your personal life, influence how you work? And I thought that was a really great idea. But they're just struggling with, like, well, how do we make that happen? How is that practical? Especially, and now, like, I'm going to start showing my age, but especially now that you have, like, Gen Z doctors, like, they're
Yes.
like young folks,
They're the
which
babies
is
now.
exactly what they thought about us.
Yeah.
But apparently it's a very specific mindset associated with a lot of Gen Z folks. And wellness is, like, very much top of mind for the young doctors coming in, right? And, like, my wellness needs to be maintained. You're not going to infringe on my wellness. This is what they feel comfortable telling to their attendings now, which
Yeah.
blows my mind. It's
That's
incredible.
so different from, yes.
It's very different. And then, all the attendings are like, well, I don't want to get yelled at about wellness right now because that's hot. It's hot in the streets and I got to listen, and we got to make things comfortable for folks. But then I'm sitting here because I get to be like the old man on the porch because I'm not in it. And I'm just like, all right, should they be the ones in charge of educating everybody on what wellness is? Do they yet know what wellness truly is for them? Because, like taking myself back to when we were 21, 22, I didn't know. Of course I didn't know. There's so much I didn't know. But if their definition, from what I'm hearing from folks, is wellness means me getting, making sure I leave, work early enough so that I don't miss my Pure Bar class, or, like, I really had plans, with my friends tonight. Like, I got to get out of here. I got to get off the work. Like,
Yeah.
is that wellness?
Maybe.
I don't know. Like, maybe it
Yeah.
is, or maybe because, like, in that sense, like, are they practicing, any techniques or learning any things that would help them navigate wellness at work, like the
Yeah.
uncomfortable things that are necessary to go through during training?
Yeah.
Are they excusing themselves from, engaging in that discomfort and saying, hey, discomfort is against my wellness, so I can't be doing that. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I see.
Yep.
And what I've been hearing from folks is the friction right now.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that? I don't know the answer, but
That's so, what came to me is, like, it's almost like, and also in a way, it makes sense because it's sort of how wellness is marketed to us, as, like, wellness as escapism versus wellness as actually, like, supporting your full human well-being, including hard feelings, including tricky,
Right.
sticky stuff, which, like,
Yeah.
welcome to medicine.
Yeah.
Ethics, human bodies, like literally sticky and smelly and leaking, because here we are, human bodies, and also, like, the emotions and the interactions. And yeah, there's a version I'm a big proponent of working under your capacity. So I don't personally I think it could be okay to design a version of healthcare where people get to go to their gym or whatever, and we'd have to innovate and figure out how that actually works practically. But I think what you're also saying, like, so valid of like that wouldn't be the end of it. That would like maybe be the beginning of the conversation. So it's like, okay,
Exactly.
so say that's what you want. Say you want your relationship with medicine to fit in certain hours of the day. And but like let's not say that's where wellness stops. Like
Right.
now let's talk about what happens between us during those hours, including like how we still get the care done during those hours. You have to have like innovative conversations about how that would actually happen. And also like as things are coming up that are impacting your sense of well-being, how are we processing those together? Is there space and are we modeling conversations of debriefing, right? And
Yeah.
that is rarely in the wellness conversations. I won't say never, of course, but like I find like it's more escapism based and like come to the hellhole of medicine and then you get your wellness like outside.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, that's exactly what I did. I don't know about your experience, but like, yeah, once you get out, you just, yeah, you escape as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And that's, sometimes that's good, sometimes it's super not good.
Yeah.
But you, but yeah, like that, nobody builds into, work hours. Like how to debrief these things, how
Yeah.
to navigate these issues that will inform, how you go on to experience your entire career. How you experience, working with your patients. I always say like, just a like early example, but I mean, I'm curious about what you think is like, I think, there's no wrong way to navigate patients who have like really, really big, heavy interactions with you, right? Like um, you can be the type of person who sits there and absorbs it and empathizes, and you like, the best thing for you to do to take care of this person is to take that on so that
Yeah.
that's how you interact. That's where you're at your best. Like that's how I was. And like, that's a choice that you make. Another choice that you make is to keep that distance.
Yeah.
Like I can be clear-eyed if I just don't engage, like keep this much distance between myself and the emotion of what's going on over here. That's how I can best take care of this person. And people make that choice that they then carry on for the rest of their careers. They start making that choice in med school, and I watch it happen. To my
Wow.
friends. You
Yes.
watch them like go through that first, death that happens under their hands. That first, traumatic, patient home situation that you like have a front row seat to. Um, and then you make your choice, but you
Mm,
do it on your own often. You're not debriefing with folks. You're not
no.
like carving it open with anybody to really help you figure out, okay, where do I fall, in dealing with this going forward. You don't have anybody to tell you what's right, what's wrong, what's fine. You know,
Yes.
um, it's really hard, and so those decisions happen so early, and not having the infrastructure in the education community to recognize that and really kind of dig into it, you know, it's tough, and it makes it, that could be a really good thing for us to focus in on, those early years where
Yeah.
everything's still formative, but not formative for long because it gets locked in pretty quick.
That's it. Then it becomes like, yeah, it's put into the cement. And unless someone's
Yeah.
doing the active work of like, I'm still becoming, like now you think it's your personality.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
think that's just how everyone's doing it. Yeah. Oh, I can think of a specific example in medical school of my first like major like harm I caused to a patient. They didn't pass
Mm.
away, but I basically exploded someone's prostate with a catheter because I didn't put it in far enough. So then the
That's
balloon
tough.
is like
That's a tough
perturbed.
explosion. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like looking back, I've done like, I've debriefed this like on the podcast before, but like the things that happened that led up to me not really having the skills or confidence, and particularly not being able to name like, I don't know if this is all the way in, or, you know, and feeling pressure to just go ahead and try. And the like I had like zero debriefing after that from other than like the person who was my preceptor was like, yeah, well, I was thinking like maybe next time I would, you know, talk you through it before you do it. I think that's all he said. And I was like, yeah. And then like he never did. And anyway, but like even like there was so much like learning lost in that experience for me. And then instead on my own, like you say, like what I learned, well, I learned not to take chances. Like I learned to try and avoid things I didn't know, which is not a great lesson to learn when you're a learner.
It's not a good lesson. Yeah. Yeah.
It means like, it means like dangerous things later. And I'm thankful that then, well, part of, I mean, I became an outpatient family physician. So I did just go ahead and not put myself in the way where there'd be as often a procedural life-saving thing I was a part of.
But yeah, I mean, maybe not in the procedural sense, but it's definitely, you know, you continue to come up with those moments where you're just like, okay, this is uncharted territory. Yes. Do I jump or do I not?
Yes, exactly. And the amount of excess like emotion and time I would take, especially early on in my career, because I had this like risk avoidant philosophy and instead would just take on more myself and blame myself and like I'm an imposter, you know, just all those classic shame-based unhelpful stories. And I'll name now, I mean, like one of the wild things about all of our educators is they were all, first of all, educated in this same system. And they're also all like full-time practicing physicians. And the teaching is an extra job that, at least where I am, does not pay the bills. Like it's sort of a nominal fee you get for it. And so it is also not totally shocking to me that then they're not totally up to date on all of the latest skills of how to actually educate people. But it is a deep tragedy because it would be useful if we were educated well and thinking in this more holistic, like humanistic way.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's tough because I'm thinking right now about kind of like, again, getting back to like the generational divide in wellness right now, where you have, you know, Gen Z residents and like, you know, millennial at the youngest attendings, who they're not educated on, you know, how to do this, how to, you know, tap into, you know, these moments that are really critical in folks' professional and personal development. They just know that, you know, they have a mandate for wellness and they're just like, all right, maybe, you know, instead of 2 days off a month, you get 4, and like, make sure you get all your doctor's appointments done that day. And just like,
it's a new thing to fail at potentially.
Yeah, it's just exactly. But they don't, you know, they don't have the vocabulary or the training or the, you know, the capacity to just do, lead on their own, like in that respect. Like they're not trained in, you know, effective, you know, compassionate leadership. You get the job, and then then you're in charge of the kids, you know, you know, you just hope you don't screw them up.
Oh, it's so true. I'd love to move further down your chronology. To hear a bit more about, you touch on it a bit in the book, but I'd love to hear any more you want to share about like how, so you run that gauntlet, you have major life formative experiences and have major life revelations that maybe it would have been nice to have in a less traumatizing way. And now you're out, now you're practicing, but something inside of you saying, I actually don't want to do this anymore. Like, what was that? How soon into this process did you have an inkling you didn't want to practice medicine forever? And what helped you make the final jump or jumps away from being like practicing clinical medicine?
Yeah. So I remember, I think it was really the first week of my job, my first job out of residency. I was just like, I can't do this forever.
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong yet, but I was just like, I can't do this forever. Like this is, I don't love this. And I know this can't be what I worked for all these
Yeah.
years, you know. And that feeling just got, the voice got louder and louder, as time went on. And when I left that job, I was at that job for 3 years, and I wasn't just sitting miserable at that job. Like I was just like, go to work, do my job, think I'm doing it pretty well while I'm there. Um, but I knew it just like something about it was like eating away at me. And when I left that job, my intention was to just find another job. Like I was like, maybe it's the environment, maybe I should be back in academic, places. Maybe I should be teaching more, and like that sort of thing. But those jobs didn't end up coming through, and I was just like, I'd quit and I didn't have another job lined up. So I was like, hey, I got some money saved. I'm not married. I don't have children. I'll just
Yeah.
like kick it for a while. And then
Nice.
like I just saw this ad on Facebook for like this job to be a medical consultant on Grey's Anatomy. And I was like, all right. And they usually give it to residents. But I was like, hey, like I'm not a resident, but I don't have a job right now. And I could take an intern salary. Like I could make peanuts for a few months. Like I just want to see what this is,
Yeah.
And once I got a taste of it, like I didn't realize, like I didn't know what a writer's room was. And I got to spend all my days with the Grey's Anatomy writers and like, figure out
Yeah.
how they write TV stories and then walk 10, feet down the road to the actual studio where they film it and walk on the sets and
Cool.
be there and help people like look like they're actually doing surgery when they have no idea what they're doing. And I was like, wait a second, this is very cool. Like, and
Yeah.
is this like a life? Like, is this a career? Like, y'all get paid for the, like, can I do this? And people were just like, yeah, you do it. Like, do X, Y, Z. And like most people like try and like, you know, but they don't have the talent. They
Mm.
don't like have the thing. But I was like, I think I can do this, and I think I can do it really well. They were like, yeah, take these classes, talk to my friend here, talk to my friend here. Like there were a lot of people who had, you know, uh, made TV writing like their second career, and I was like, all right, like I'm gonna try to get up in here, and I did, and I ended up like just being a full-time writer for The Resident for a couple of years, and was like fully in it. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to go back. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, because I found a way to find, like, this is what I always wanted to do. I was like, is there a way to mesh, the things I learned in medicine with the things I love in my life and about myself, And I think for everyone, you can find that balance. You
Mm.
can, like, it won't look the same for everybody. You can find that balance in medicine,
Yeah.
you know, um, if you know what you're looking for and you take the time to listen to yourself and figure out what's really important. Because what they don't tell you when you're going through training is how many ways you can do this job. You know, like
Yes.
like there's so many different ways to use the skills and the knowledge. It's not just in the ways that your teachers at the time are doing it. And
Mm.
so there's so much freedom out there if you're not too scared to look for it. And so that's what, I've kind of become like the patron saint of quitting medicine because like
Yes.
people call me all the time. Like my old, residency buddies like will call me after I haven't heard from them in 10 years. And then it'll be like, hey, uh, I'm thinking about quitting, and you're the one that everyone said to talk to. So, and I'm always like, hey, step one, yes, totally do that. Um, but yeah, like it's just, just I think it's hard and kind of scary uh, to think about doing something different, but uh, just remember that you won't have wasted any part of your life by switching gears. You know, anything you do from here on out is informed by all you've done to this point. So you're not wasting the time you spent doing medicine traditionally, or you're not wasting, you know, anything that you did up to this point. It's all made you who you are right now, and it's all informed what you're going to do. And you can do really special things, you know, with the individual experiences and loves and passions that you have.
Yeah. Would you say that's like one of the main like worries or questions when people are calling you up and you have your little quitting medicine consultation? Is it a fear of like, that means that it'll all have been a waste, or I'll be wasting all of this time and energy and money? And like, what are some other fears that people have when they're trying to make that decision for themselves?
Folks, start with the money fear. That's the easiest thing to access. It's just like, man, I haven't paid off my loans yet. And, you know,
Yeah.
there's never a good time. Like, you know, the kids or, you know, what have you, or like, you know, all that sort of stuff. There's a million surface reasons not to make a change, right?
Yep.
I think it's often hard for folks to articulate the fear of of the judgment that other people may or
Yes.
may not have, the fear of the judgment they will be giving to themselves, you know, like saying, okay, like it's, you can't make the move because then you are a failure. You are a quitter, you know, and that's not ever how I have identified myself, and I don't think I can handle that, you know. And so, you know, that's usually what's underneath a lot of the easy to identify, you know, roadblocks to changing your life. Um, and then, you know, what I do on those phone calls is just be like, hey, you know, let's talk about why this is really hard, you know,
Yeah.
and let's just air it out. And once you're able to put words to it, once you're able to actually say it, you know, it gets less scary. And then, you know, people kind of get some freedom from that, I think.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. And like you say, like, well, it sounds like what you've named as sort of your reasons for going was like really focusing on what you love the most and what you find the most passion in. And I'm curious, as because like part of how you know that is almost in contrast of like, so you're at that job and you're like, something is not meshing up. This is like round peg, square hole, or whatever the expression is, right? What was the distinguishing factors for you versus like what you really know that you love versus what was happening day to day in that clinical environment?
Yeah. Well, once I started working, that's when I started writing the book in earnest. And
Okay.
so I would come home on my days off and I would sit for like 2, 3 hours and like try to figure out this book idea. And like that's what I was doing with all my free time.
Yeah.
And like having that as this constant reminder of just like, you know, the possibilities, you know, like what if I get an agent? What if I sell this book? What if, you know, what if?
Yeah.
And following how excited that stuff made me. And then squaring that with trying to figure out where my excitement was coming from at my job. You know, is it coming from anywhere? You know, I
Yeah.
love like my favorite part is you know, talking to patients in clinic, you know, like helping them understand what they're going through, what they will be going through, you know, helping them navigate, you know, the questions, like trying to help them learn how to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Like all that sort of stuff is really important to me. And I was just like, okay, well, where does that stuff fall? Like that's something I'd like to take forward, but I don't know how. And if I could do just that and not all the paperwork and standing in
Yeah.
the OR all day, like doing, you know, 900 tonsils, then, you know, maybe there's something there. I don't know. But there was just the friction was always there
Yeah.
in my head. But, you know, the question about, you know, is it worth just taking a jump and seeing what's out there and leaving what's familiar behind, you know, that built over time,
Yeah.
It's not like I had this like grand scheme when I started work to quit.
Yeah.
It's just it was stuff I had to learn about myself along the way, and then just like convince myself and let other people who are close to me that I trust convince me that it was okay.
Yeah. Wow. And I mean, in that, you also had this direct contrast of like, why am I more lit up about the thing I'm doing on my day off versus the thing I'm doing here, right? And some
Yeah.
people kind of just accept it's like work is work and fun is fun. And,
Yeah. And I
there's many
just
ways to live a life.
I mean, maybe that's a function of kind of where I fall on the immigrant generation scale. Because like I think
Yeah.
like for my parents, my mom was born in the States, but her family's from Trinidad, and my dad was born in Jamaica. And, my immigrant family story was, as far as work is concerned, was very much work is work.
Yeah.
And you do the work so that you can live this life outside of work that you value so much because, it's better than where you came from.
Yeah.
And, I think maybe the mistake they made was raising kids for the next generation who thought they had some choices about what they find interesting with their lives and what work should or could be. And so, I grew up and had kind of the audacity to think that I should be able to love my job. Um,
Mm.
and it kind of never let go of that. And I was just like, you know what? You know, good Lord, is life short. So if I'm spending 40 to 80 hours a week doing something, like I should be able to love it, shouldn't I? Like, is that too much to ask?
Yeah.
And if I don't, I better change it
Yes.
because if I don't, then anybody who's close to me, the people who depend on me, the people who I value the most, they're going to suffer because I'm not happy.
Yes.
And as much as I don't want to, I'll find a way to take it out on them in some way. And I couldn't stomach that thought anymore. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. I guess, I mean, that's the big thing is if you think like, oh, I can hate my job and then I'll just have a nice rest of my life. But like it's not like, what's the show everyone's talking about? Severance? Is that the right show?
yep,
Like
yep.
you take how you are at work home with you. So
hmm
you can't
That's the whole
be
point
like,
of severance. It
yes.
doesn't. The severance procedure doesn't work.
Yes. And so, especially when you literally can remember your memories,
Yeah.
you're home, you're grumpy. Like if you could find a way to be like growl, growl, growl at work, and then at home you're like, I'm so present, I'm so free. Like you figured it out.
Then you figure it out.
Congratulations.
That's
But
cool.
most people, there's residual that comes with you.
I'd say all people. Like
Yes, there's some
nobody
robot out
successfully
there.
severs.
Yeah.
They can't do it,
Yeah.
and whether you can see it or not, I think.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally.
hmm
So then I'm curious because like sometimes what happens is you see something you love and then you jump to that being your profession. And because it's now still your profession, that means it's not like every day is literally rainbows and like there's probably some parts of any job that are like more annoying and less annoying.
hmm
So I'm curious what that's been like for you. Like, so you're like, I'm leaving and I'm going for my dream job, and you got to write for a television show. Um, what was that like? Was it literally like, I've got my dream job, this is it? Were there pieces of it that still were like adjustment and you're like, uh-oh, like some of this isn't what I want still? Like, what has that journey been like?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a pretty realistic view of how life works. And so any job, I recognize is a job
Yeah.
and it's going to suck sometimes. But I would always like, and still now, like I pretty regularly, check in, when, like right now I'm trying to sell a TV show and I've been working on that situation for
Cool.
the last 2 years. And it's a
Wow.
long process. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of frustrations that happen. Um, and, when I'm frustrated, I'll sit uh, at the end of the day and just be like, but would I choose anything else?
Yes.
Yeah. And the answer is absolutely not.
Right.
Like I will suffer these moments in order to like tell these stories on like the biggest stage that I possibly can that I think are important, you know. That just makes me so excited and so happy. And, you know, when I think about should I go back to medicine, I was like, never crosses my mind. Absolutely not. Like medicine as I knew it and as I experienced it, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, when you know, there's no like magical rainbow job. Um, but you just check in with yourself
Yeah.
and just ask. And that helps me at least stay grounded and excited and all that stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, because sometimes people think if I find a job I love, then I'll never have like negative emotions. But it's like you say, it's the flip where it's like, which job am I willing to have negative emotions doing?
Yeah,
Because
like
the core of it.
yeah, it's kind of like when they ask you like when you're trying to figure out your specialty or your subspecialty, it's just like what's the worst part of each
Mm,
subspecialty and which one can you doesn't upset you that much or doesn't gross you out. Like if you're going to be like, you know, I'm sorry, since I'm an ENT, that's just where my head goes. But
yeah.
like, if you're in ENT and you want to specialize in ENT, like, and you want to be a laryngologist, the voice doctors, and you save, you know, like famous singers come to your office and you inject their vocal cords, and then their voice is back, and they can sing a concert, and you get tickets, and it's amazing. Um, can you deal with people coming in to see you for their acid reflux? Um,
Yep.
9 times a day, every day. Because in between all the fun parts, that's the actual day to day stuff. You're seeing
Yeah.
reflux. And so, is the worst part of your job something that's still fine for you? You know?
That's so
And if the
much
answer is yes,
wisdom.
then you got your answer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Plus, like, somebody was Julie Andrews' doctor, and maybe it wasn't their fault, but like, I'm just thinking that one particular of like, there's the highs and the lows
There's the highs and the
stakes to such
lows, man.
things.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But, you know, it's just like you just got to keep interrogating yourself.
Hmm.
Don't run away from that. I think that's been the one of the healthier lessons I've learned is just
Yeah.
that'll just keep when things get overwhelming because everything can get overwhelming. Like if you can take a step back and just be like, okay, you know, this sucks, um,
Hmm.
but do I still love this as it sucks? You know?
Yeah. Sort of like who you're married to. Like, who do I love even when I'm in a fight with them, if you will?
Yeah,
You know what
you
I
know,
mean?
like
Yeah.
who do I want to be like at my worst with and
Mm,
when they're at
yes.
their worst? And is it still are we still going to be just fine? You know, like yeah, same questions.
Yeah. I had one like very specific question about writing for medical TV. I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
if the show you're writing now is or not, but like the other ones you have were medical, right?
Mhm.
And I was thinking about you as I was watching House. I don't know if naming. I don't like House. It's a show. It's not my favorite medical show.
Yeah.
And there was things I'm like, like some of it's like the inaccuracies of it. Like the main thing about House, if I may for a minute, is how they
You
all do
may.
all everything themselves. The same group of doctors is like running the pathology labs and putting them into the CT machine. Anyway, there's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of things about that show. I'm like, this feels extremely unrealistic. Did you feel any kind of pressure having probably felt some of those feelings or heard people talk about like, oh, those medical shows, they get this wrong, they get that wrong, and now you are the person who is like the bridge between those two worlds?
Hmm.
Were there times you felt that pressure to try and like, represent accurately, or like, sometimes you got to make the choice because it's the dramatic thing even though it's not really what happens?
Hmm. Yeah, man. I think so. I think we all need to remember that these are works of fiction.
Yes. Yeah.
In the end, like we want to be like, oh man, you know, like they just like where's the radiology resident? No one's just like sitting there
Yeah,
getting and then reading their own CT like
exactly.
but you know like these are works of fiction and you got to move things along for the sake of the story. um but uh my guiding light when I was thinking about working with the writers and all that sort of stuff is we want to be accurate as we can be, truthful as we can be. Um, we can't always do that, but we want to be responsible. And so there are
Mm.
certain um, inaccuracies that don't really matter.
Yeah.
Like if we portray them in the wrong way.
Sure.
But there are certain inaccuracies that really will have an impact if we get them wrong, on the people listening to these stories. Like if it's a story about, like I wrote an episode about medical bias against obese patients.
Oh, such an
And
important topic.
yeah, and it was just like, one of the questions that came up was, how do we hire this actor? Do we put out a call for overweight actors? Is that cool? Or should we get a skinny actor and put a fat suit on them? And I was just like, here's the answer. Do not put a suit on an actor.
Yeah, no suit for sure.
This is
not the
very
suit.
simple. All right, guys. Like if you want to have this to have the impact that you really want and that we all really want, yeah, hire the actor who's overweight. And I guarantee that actor will have gone through the same stuff that we're saying this patient has gone through, and they'll bring that to their performance. And people will see that on TV and be like, oh, like they didn't shy away from that. That's where you make sure that you're hitting the mark with as much accuracy and intention as you can. But if you're speeding up the rate at which people get labs back or what have you, it doesn't matter.
That's fair.
So that was kind of how I approach things.
I love that. Because which inaccuracies matter. That's so powerful. I love just knowing that people are thinking about that stuff. So
yeah, and it's not easy for everybody to, because there's not a lot of doctor writers in Hollywood. There's really only like a certain handful, and they kind of work on all the same shows. But even so, many of those folks, like it's a lesson they have to learn is like you're in a room with folks who aren't doctors, and they're going to come up with some ideas that are just bonkers. And and your job is to not stifle their creativity, right? Because then it makes you a bummer and no one wants to work with you, and then you end up not having jobs. So if a writer comes up to you and is like, oh man, like I just had this idea. What if like a person just like exploded? And then the question is like, how do you react to that, right? It's like, because they're pumped up, they're just like, man, I've been thinking, there's got to be a way, just people just, boom. And you have to be like, hey man, here's my question for you. Emotionally,
yes,
what does that explosion mean? Like, what's the real story you want to tell with this explosion? And I will help you find the medicine that will link up with that. And like that's how you got to finesse the conversation. And so then you come up with something else that like maybe makes a little more sense, but gets the bombastic, exciting thing they were looking for. But it doesn't make them doesn't shoot them down because they're very sensitive.
Oh,
so
and you know what? Like, I just want to say this is a directly applicable like communication skill. I mean, between two humans of any kind, certainly with patients, like a thing that I have learned over time and that I like teach and suggest people consider is like when the patient comes in, they're like, I need 5 MRIs. I need it yesterday. So in a similar way, like I have a very fixed idea of what I need here. And then finding the gentle, tell me more about what you think that MRI will tell us about you. It's like actually the same skill set.
It's the same skill. It's not wasted. The training is not wasted.
It's not
it keeps
wasted.
Coming up in different ways.
So cool. Well, in our remaining minutes, can you tell me a bit about what you're up to now? So you're trying to sell a TV show.
Yes. So currently I'm in the process. I can't talk about it because it'll, maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll won't. That's the nature of Hollywood these days. But I spent the last couple of years working on a TV pilot with a studio, and it took a long time. And now we're finally out on the town trying to sell it to people, and we're waiting to see who says, yes, we want to meet you and talk more about it. So that's going on as we speak. And it's giving me a pretty significant baseline of anxiety day to day. So that's a lot of fun. Also working on, another pitch for another TV show that could be really fun. The first show is medical. The second show is branching out, which is exciting because I don't want to write medical stuff for the rest of my life. And so I'm doing those things. And also, I have a really cool job now with a startup out of San Francisco where we're trying to work on an AI, uh, a conversational AI coach slash companion for healthcare professionals to help them navigate all
Cool.
these difficult and challenging moments and dynamics that they come across, especially in training. So all the
Yeah.
stuff we were talking about today is very top of mind because I'm training in AI in terms of how to have a conversation with a resident
Yeah.
when they're, if they're like, coming out of an interaction, they don't know how they feel, but they just know they have to get it out, and having training something to have a conversation that actually helps people put name to what they're feeling and help them move forward, and
Wow.
all that stuff. So it's like crazy um, to be doing, but I really think this could be, if we can get it right, something
Yeah.
that's really impactful for folks. So we're
That's so
really,
cool.
really trying to get that right. And hopefully people want to use it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's like, as I'm doing, like my brain is split with like the creative life, but also like actually, like I actually am emotionally invested in my other work right now because I think it's like, hey, this is something I would have wanted.
Yeah.
So let's get it right. So it's really cool. So those are the two things I'm uh, working on, in addition to just being in Northern England and everything's green and
Yeah.
beautiful.
And the Northern England part, was that like your dream for you and your family to live there? Like how did, because a lot of the work you're saying is America based.
Yeah, yeah. So not my dream. It was my
Okay.
wife's dream. And
Oh,
so like after I quit my job, she was a nurse practitioner. And after I
oh,
kind of
cool.
like got my writing jobs and I was like getting established, she was like, "Cool, can I quit my job now?" And so she left her job, and she'd always wanted to live in Europe. She'd always loved England, big Anglophile, but also like wanted to go back to school. And so she went back for a master's in archaeology. And Durham University worldwide is one of the three best archaeology programs in the world. And so that's how we ended up here. We'd never heard of this place, moved here kind of sight unseen, and it's turned out to be like super, super great. Um,
Wow.
and just, it's just, my kids are like living these like charmed lives like here in England, and it's very
Yes.
adorable. We got like, sheep, 5 minutes away in any direction. Just there's like,
Yes.
rolling hills and farms. We go to eat at the farm, and we go on hikes on the coast. It has like that really rocky, cliffy
Mm.
coastline that you like. They had like in like Broadchurch, that show from a few years ago, is just
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah,
Oh,
it's just like those kind of coast. Like everything's really beautiful, and it's safe. Like there's no guns, and so like
yeah.
I can walk around at night and know I'm gonna make it home, and
Mm.
it's just stuff like that is just priceless. So I've been so surprised and so like delighted by what life is like here.
Oh, it sounds so dreamy. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah, come visit. It's the best.
Yes, I will have to. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your time and your story,
Yeah.
Tony. I feel like I could talk to you for like 50 more hours, but we
Oh,
shall not
we can we
today.
can we can I can come back and we could talk about whatever you want. That's totally fine.
Excellent. So if folks did want to find you, or do you have like public facing stuff that, well, definitely buy the book,
Yes, buy the
right?
book. Buy the book. Buy the
Yep.
book.
And how else could they interact with you on
Yes.
the world stage?
So the book is called "I Can't Save You." It's under my government name, Anthony Chin-Quee.
Hmm.
And yeah, please go buy it. You can get it anywhere. Um, and if you want to, I don't really use Twitter anymore, so
Yeah.
don't try to find me there. Mostly, I'm on Instagram. I don't post a lot because I really don't enjoy using social media. I only do it when I have to. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm at where you at, WHEYOUAT. It was my like AIM screen name from back when I was like 14. So, but yeah, if you look up my name, I'm there too as Tony Chin-Quee, and I'm on Blue Sky. If you look up Anthony Chin-Quee, I'm there too. So that's about as forward facing as I get.
So good. All right. Well, the last question I ask every guest is for those listening, so most folks who are listening are working in healthcare. Maybe they're trainees, maybe they've been in practice for a long time. And there's something they're listening to me if they think, yeah, I want to feel more human in healthcare. Like I want to reconnect with my humanity. And maybe they're listening to your story and they're noticing that how their work in healthcare isn't lighting them up. Something else is lighting them up, but they are scared. They're not sure like if they could make the leap themselves. What advice or wisdom or encouragement would you want to offer to them?
Yeah, it kind of gets back to what we were saying earlier. Life's too short to be that scared. And you deserve to be excited and thrilled by what your life is right now. You know, not what it might be later on, not what it used to be or whatever, like right now. And that doesn't mean quit your job and like start basket weaving, but like maybe it means like, you know, go take that basket weaving class, you know, like start doing it, like make the time. Like we get into this this mindset of like scarcity of our own time. Like, oh, there's no time for this. I have to do this. I have to do this. Like, I guarantee you, if you do this little exercise of like actually sitting down and writing down where your time goes every day, you will find pockets that can be condensed. You will find pockets that can be expanded into free time for you. Like the time exists, you know, so make it for the stuff that you love. Like, or else what are we doing any of this life for?
You're singing my song, Tony. I agree completely. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
And everyone listening, thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk to you next week. I would love to take this work deeper with you. Visit joanchanmd.com today and discover my growing menu of options for restorative medical education to suit your learning needs. I offer one-on-one coaching, customized workshops, and self-study courses that allow you to connect not only with my work on a deeper level, but also with other healthcare humans just like you. So if you want to start humanizing your work in healthcare to a deeper level and do it in community with others, please visit joanchanmd.com and find those options and what fits you and your life today.